Hi there. This is going to be the first audio post under the subcategory called Gratitude. Yesterday I launched with a podcast, Top 5 Memories with Dad, my category that I explained and that I'm calling the Top 5. This one is called Gratitude. So each week, what I will do, at least one time a week, I will do either an audio or video post specifically thanking somebody in my life for the role that they've played on my journey. So before I get to that first person that I'm going to talk about with today's post, I just wanted to talk generally for a second about the importance of gratitude and appreciation. Quite frankly, they are right up there with the emotion and the expression that you have in your life of love. As, in my opinion, the absolute most powerful fuel that you can place behind yourself in your life in an effort to have the best life that you want for yourself. Once I stumbled, so most of you, if you haven't been following my story, what's important to know here is that I took 10 months off in preparation of a move, a very, very big life move, essentially representing a move from Florida to Washington, which essentially represented the first time in my life that I was following my heart, that I was putting my life ahead of what I wanted for my life, ahead of what I felt everybody else wanted for my life. I finally was starting to listen to myself. However, I knew very well that I did not want to go out there with all the baggage that I was still holding on to. You know, at this point, in 2010, when I went home to Michigan for this time period, for these 10 months, I had been 2+ years into consciously trying to get myself into a more positive place in my life. You know, really, really beginning to do the work that is required if you want real change for yourself. And so, however, I knew I was not at nearly through the thick of it yet. I had not gotten through the thick of it yet. And instinctively, I remember I was actually contemplating very seriously teaching overseas in China in between the time in Florida to Washington. You know what? It was just crazy. I was still right up until probably March, you know, contemplating going out of the country, and i.e. running again under the auspices of, yes, another cool life adventure, and yes, yet another achievement. But in my heart and soul, I knew it would have been running yet again. So I went where I had to go, and I went home to Michigan for the first time to live since I was 18. And I, as you may be paying attention to, you may not, on the website recently under the written blog, I have been sharing old journal entries from this time, specifically from August. So I got home on July 6th is when I arrived back in Plymouth, Michigan, of 2010. So those journal entries, I had been home a solid month, and as you can see, that's pretty much represents my low, my lowest of low of the recent. It was shortly after that I'll talk more about this journey in detail in these parts of it. But this is important because I really, truly cannot overestimate the importance of expressing gratitude. Basically, what I knew I needed to do, I needed to write a letter. In this case, I needed to write a letter to my dad. I did, and a lot of stuff went back, again, child of divorce. I mean, it doesn't take an Einstein to put that all together. I mean, there was a lot of my pain went back to how that situation, everything in my life changed in all of our lives, my mom's, my brothers and I, and of course my dad. But it was, it was ultimately his decision to do what happened, and that's okay. He did what he had to do, but that's what I had to make peace with. So I wrote a very, very long letter, and I had known for months I wanted to write it, but it was one of the most painful things I've ever had to do. And although I had been writing it in my head for about a year, when I finally sat down, it took me a week. It took me a full week with my full attention, and it was, woo. And I mailed it. I mailed it to him. I did. And no regrets. I don't believe in regrets. They're silly to have. Why have them? You've already done whatever you've done. Don't waste any energy beating yourself up over it. Trust it. Know that it happened for some reason, no matter how it looks, on the surface. So I can tell you, though, immediately it felt like I had thousands and thousands of pounds off of myself. All of the unexpressed anger I had directed it inward at myself, and I didn't even have any clue how damaging that was to myself until I got it all out. And, in retrospect now, would I advise, others along your own journey, if you find you have a similar thing that, because really writing letters is something that is highly recommended. You'll probably find, you've probably heard that from counselors as well. That's not anything shockingly new, but I think in most cases you suggest like burning it or throwing it out, just getting it out of you. However, I'm a big proponent of following what your heart tells you to do, because, sometimes I think, yes, is it being kind of the bigger person to just know that you don't, if the other person isn't ready to hear something that you have to say, it's kind of wasted, right? However, it's something that they won't forget. And so maybe years down the road, they'll remember that you went there and expressed what you did, even though it might have been hurtful, and somehow that will help them heal down the line. I always say follow your gut. My gut told me that, although it was probably my gut told me to mail that. My gut told me to mail it, so I did. Shortly after that is when I read about the entirety or parts of about 40 spiritual books, spanning the gamut. Everything from the big three religions, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, to paganism, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucius, Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, The Secret, The Power, Eckhart Tolle, you name it. Crystals, astral travel, sacred geometry, astrology, sacred feminine, divine feminine. I was devouring anything and everything and open to it all. Open to it all. There wasn't anything that, and to this day, there isn't anything that I don't think is possible. Not anything. I'm open to it all. And I let it in. I let it mix and marinate inside of me for a little bit. And sometimes things immediately deflect off. And I'm like, no, okay, somebody else can have that as their truth. But that doesn't work for me. And that's cool. So let it bounce off. But other things, I let them and they sit inside and I try them on. And if it sticks and if it feels like truth to me, then I adopt it. I adopt it for myself, and I incorporate it into my own life for my own benefit. Okay, so I was taking in a lot. And I'll tell you, it was one of the most beautiful times on the journey thus far, because all I could see, all I could feel and see and read as I took all this in was the same message. That's what I'm saying. We are all on the same team. We've got to play a different game where we acknowledge that fact. Everything I read, yes, there are different words. There are different customs. There are different things that we do in all the interpretations, but they're all saying the same thing. Peace, love, happiness, unconditional love, no judgment. We're all connected, and you gotta believe. Because this greater power of which all the faiths talk about, you can't see it, okay? They're trying scientifically to prove it. They're trying. And believe me, there's a lot of science, a lot of metaphysics that's on the top of my list to begin to research when I hit sort of the next phase of my work, like in 6 to 12 months. I can't wait to read more about the metaphysics. Are you kidding me? Read Einstein's quotes. That dude was dialed in. There is definitely science to prove that there's so much more beyond what our five senses can pick up on. Okay, so one of the many themes throughout that I picked up on, it wasn't even discussed overtly. It was just as I took all of this beautiful material in and just let it all, that was all I was doing. I was taking music out of the library and listening to anything and everything from the world music section and the new age section, combining it with all of this beautiful spiritual reading with my journaling. I mean, it was just an intensely, really beautiful time. really beautiful time. And it was just automatic. I automatically felt the need to thank everybody. In this case, I was making peace. I was bringing closure to my entire childhood life. I realized, you will see in the next journal entry that I put from August 18th or the 19th. It's just a couple days after the one I just posted yesterday. You will see I didn't even realize how much of my child I was holding on to through this adult life. I truly, truly didn't understand. And it was all emotionally. And it was due to this pain that I was holding on to from my childhood, from our family, the breakup of our family. Like, that was the crux of it. That was the core of it. And there was, for me, no way I was going to reach my potential until I made peace with that. So as I began to fill myself, because I was empty. When I unloaded all that stuff on my dad, my poor dad, and I unloaded, and I felt empty inside. I mean, I felt lighter, but I felt empty. Like, I did not have any self-love. I mean, twinges. Like, I've always known of my talents. I know of my gifts, but it was just drilled into me that somehow, I don't know, that I wasn't good enough to be all of that. All I know is that that's what I was filling into my heart as I read all of this material. And then instinctively, I just wanted to embrace, I was sort of rewriting my story. I was reliving my first 18 years and making peace with all that pain, and instead looking at those exact kind of experiences, but instead taking all the lessons from it and being so appreciative of how much growth that pain caused in me. Because you dream when you're in pain. When you're in pain, you are launching all sorts of what my favorite teacher, Abraham Hicks, says, rockets of desire. Because you're wanting anything different than what you're living. And that's the basis of your dreams. That's the basis of creating what you want for your life. So, God, of course I was going to embrace all my sadness now, because I was beginning to understand how all this, quote unquote, this works. How we can control our own personal, we can't control anybody else, but we have ridiculous control over our own individual personal lives. And it was coming together. It was coming together for me very quickly because I made this time for myself. And don't kid yourself, this wasn't, you'll read in some of these journal entries, it's not all cake. You think, oh, you got to leave the world and this was for serious work into when you hit your demons head on. It was months of not so fun things on my low as I, just have to burst through that sadness and make peace with it. So, so gratitude. So I begin to reach out to anybody and everybody, my family, my friends, my coaches, and I meet up with people and I see people I haven't seen since high school. And I'm just loving every moment of my life in a whole new way. Okay? Then come to find out, when I get introduced to the favorite teacher that I just referenced, Abraham Hicks, I was not introduced to Abraham Hicks until May of 2011. But when I was introduced to Abraham Hicks, who, among other things, always is stressing in their responses to people, always stressing the extreme importance of gratitude and appreciation. Even before that, like I said, I had already kind of picked up on that importance. So it was amazing, and very, very powerful actually it was one of the reasons I think that Abraham's teachings like instantaneously resonated as truth for me. I mean, I was hooked. I think I went out in the first video I listened to on YouTube, certainly by 2 or 3. I was hooked. It was truth for me. And I'm sure it had a lot to do with this, the thread of gratitude. Okay, long introduction. So here's the person. So I was thinking to myself today, man, there have been, oh my gosh, so many people to thank. Like, the list is so long, and there's nothing that warms my heart more than, honestly, than letting people know what they've played, like how important they've been in my life. I don't think we do that nearly enough. I think it's one of the tragedies of how fast we live our lives these days, and we think that that's being more productive. I'm telling you folks, slow the hell down. Slow down. Because I was stopped. You got to get stopped in your tracks if you really want a chance to recalibrate. And I'm even going to say this even if you're happy. Even if you're a person that you feel like you're pretty happy. I'm telling you, you're missing life if you're running at it at the pace that almost everybody's running at it. That's part of the underlying motivation for my work as well. I want to begin to be able to show people and demonstrate to people, wait till you see what I've done in a year working in your world and in the definition of our present paradigm, right? When you think of that 40-hour work week, you think of that model and at a desk and how that works. Oh my God, I have blown that out of the water in terms of productivity. And I'm not even, and again, I understand that my life might not be one to extrapolate out, but that's the whole point. I was supposed to kind of test this and go to the extreme and then be able to help others wherever they're at, work to whatever they want to work to in their lives that they see in mind that they might want for themselves. Because you're going to see things you're going to want. I mean, seriously? Would you not want to have a job where you work exactly when you're ready to, when the flow comes? And would you not want to have a job that when you give yourself the space to have a job and to work in that manner, it's more efficient than you can ever imagine? When you don't let arbitrary deadlines, or they're not arbitrary in the work world, I understand that, but when you somehow work into allowing space for if something isn't ready to come, if you got to work so hard and force it, it's almost guaranteed it's not going to be anywhere near what it could be if you allowed whatever that is to develop with the flow of life. Okay? So, more tangent. Sorry. Gratitude. So one person I thought of who has been somebody that I mean, just on, and I was thinking on many levels, right? Because there's super important people down here in Sarasota who have played my dream team. I mean, my dream team has been super key. I could not be where I'm at without each and every one of those folks playing the role that they played, in my life. But when I think of all of this, i.e. my move to Seattle, a very powerful city that was absolutely calling me. Upon my arrival in Seattle, my very recent, innocent, almost naive excitement at discovering this new way to live in the world, this amazing knowledge that I now possess about how much power and control we have to create the life and the world of our dreams. Okay, so believe me, I'm not a patient person, and it's like I found something I was looking for 31 years, or 30 plus, 30 years. So, old story Alyson, she's a little wild still, remember? Because I'm still balancing out into my adulthood here, holding on to that child, and I didn't even realize to what extent I was. So, this woman was very key in just sort of, in that sense, in that regard, in terms of somebody who was already established in sort of that spiritual world that I was aspiring to kind of get to, that level. Okay, so I'll explain more in a second. What other level? Oh my gosh, through her, met nine other, because that's right, one more joined after, 9 other amazing, beautiful, superhero power, like amazing women in Seattle, through this one woman, who have provided me with so much support that